It's the EP Podcast. Evergreen Park.
The EP Podcast has a couple of folks from Central Middle School, District 124 down here today. And I'm interested into what they do because they came down here and they're already trying to describe it to me. I'm like, whoa, we're going to save this for the interview. But we have Matt Werman here with us. We have Julie Kelly. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. All right. So break this down for me. You're not exactly teachers, but you work with the teachers. You're essentially coaches over at Central. Tell me a little bit about this.
Sure. Yeah. So we are instructional coaches. We've both been teaching about 20 years. But now in our instructional coach role, we're really here to support teachers in different ways. So, there's so much demand. Teachers are demanded to do so many things. And so we're really here to, support them and help them to meet their goals.
All right. So what kind of goals are we talking about here, Julie? I mean, it sounds to me like they're putting together their lesson plans, I would assume. They're teaching the kids on an everyday basis. They're, I know if they have to deal with a problem in the classroom, there's deans that are over there now. So there's a lot of support that's around them. So where do you guys step in?
So we step in on the instructional side. So everything that we do is based on student achievement, student growth. We spend time with teachers planning. We also spend time looking at data, seeing where students are, where gaps are, where we can focus our instruction, and how to engage students in that process. So really, we are there for the instructional support.
So it's more big picture, because I would think back to my kids who are now older. I mean, one's in college at U of I, and I have another one that's a junior in high school, and they were not over at Central. Okay, but every school and every school system will have similar problems, right? Like my junior just went and took the ACT this past weekend, and he came back and said the same thing that his older sister had said. There's some stuff on there that I've never seen before, right? And I remember when his sister, even though she was a COVID kid, she basically lost the last couple months of her grammar school or 8th grade year and went into high school with everybody doing it from home. She was also behind in certain sciences. Her school just did not cover things that the high school thought they should already know. So there were these gaps, as you're describing. With you guys working so closely with the high school and you being the jump that gets them ready to go to Evergreen Park Community High School or wherever they go. Is that one of the main things, trying to make sure you're looking at test scores, you're looking at what the high school is looking for and trying to make sure the teachers are on that track?
Yeah, we're looking at that, but we're also looking at even breaking it down even more with student work in the classroom. So we're looking at kind of at that macro level that you just talked about of the big picture, and then also narrowing it down to what each individual classroom, each individual student's needs are as well.
Yeah. So a teacher may come to us and say, I feel like my student engagement isn't as good as I want it to be. And so we say, okay, well, let's work on student engagement. So
that's just getting them to raise their hand though, right?
Well,
no?
More
okay. All right. I'm a simpleton over here, but I mean, I'm saying, you're like student engagement. I'm like, okay, they're not raising their hand enough. Like that. Okay. So tell me what that is.
But yeah, student engagement really being participating. I mean, it's more than just the old school way is, there's the sage on the stage, the teacher talks, students take notes. We've evolved quite a bit from that today. And so student engagement is there's a lot of student discourse among the students, students, just kind of working through the problems or whatever might be in the classroom. And so the teacher may say, my students are not as engaged as they should be. And so we'll come in and say, okay, well, let's first take some data on that. Let me just watch your class and see how many kids are raising their hands, see how many kids are doing the work, see how many kids are completing the assignments. And then we're like, all right, well, we've got a handful of strategies from different sites, different books we read, and let's just try one. And maybe Julie and I will come in and model that technique for the teacher. And then we'll kind of take data again. Now you try the technique and then we'll see. Did more students get engaged? Was this new novelty thing? Was that more fun for students? They seem to be more excited about it. And we'll kind of look at that data and then figure out, what else we can do to keep those kids participating and engaged.
Julie, what Matt's describing here sounds more like a teacher comes to you and says, I need help with this, than you are just lurking and showing up in the back of the classroom, right?
100%.
Because when you guys started describing your thing, I'm like, these are the guys that when a teacher's doing a class and all of a sudden they're in the back of the classroom, like, it's going to be one of those days. They're asking you to come in because
Yes.
they're noticing something's a little off. And what's interesting about this is very forward thinking to me. Like, that's my impression of this, hearing this for the first time. You know, I think back to my time as a student a long time ago, and the teacher used the same lesson plan that they had used for 20 years. And you had to conform to that lesson plan. And if you weren't keeping up, it was clearly the student's problem. And they didn't really look at it as that everybody learns a little bit differently. Everybody comes from a little bit of a different place. And while that may sound soft to some people, that is the reality. And you want the kids to learn and excel as fast and as well as they possibly can. So it sounds to me like nowadays you'll get a teacher that'll sit there and say, look, I'm trying what used to work. Something's not right here. I need another set of eyes. That's what you guys are.
Absolutely. We are that other set of eyes. And we're there to help teachers feel confident about what they're doing, to feel like they can make a difference, because that makes the most effective teacher. And it's impossible to do by yourself in the world of education today. So we're there to support them.
Do either of you have I hate to throw you, out on the spot, but an example of something recently that you kind of tried? Because to me, it sounds like it sounds simple, but I'm sure it's not simple, right? Like the idea that you have a teacher that says, hey, come on in here, or we got to get these scores up, or we got to do whatever. It doesn't sound like, it sounds like, oh, I just come in, I see something, I go, hey, I read this thing in a book one time, try this, and it's done. But I know it's not that simple. Can you kind of explain it a little bit to me? Any kind of example whatsoever. I love this. I love how I threw you both on there. I was like, both of you are like, whoa, hold on a second. What are we talking about here?
I'll give one example from something we did last week. We had some teachers who came to us and said that we're noticing that students aren't asking good questions, because questioning is part of the learning process, right?
Right.
And we've noticed that we're just not getting those higher level questions from our students, and everything's kind of surface level. Can you help us? So we did a professional development during our teachers' plan time, their team plan time last week, on how to encourage students to write higher level questions so that they could then bring those right back into the classroom. Learning today
that has to be interesting.
It is
try to
interesting.
get kids to write these days.
Right.
I found out this week. I was today years old when I found out that this generation thinks that when I put a period after the word okay,
You're
that
mad.
I'm angry with them. Oh my God, that's true. She just said it. That I'm mad. My son told me that. He goes, when you write okay with a period after it, it sounds like you're yelling at me. I go, what kind of weird hocus pocus are you talking about? He goes, no, because you took the time to hit the extra key. So you must be ticked off of me. And I said, no, I was taught this is how you write sentences. He goes, yeah, you use punctuation in between every word and it really sounds angry. I'm like, because it's supposed to be there. There's no commas in what you write. So, I mean, it must be difficult to teach these kids how to write good questions when they're shorthanding everything and they're communicating through social media more than they're communicating face to face.
Right. And that's one part of it is writing the question, and the other part is then discussing it.
Yeah.
In a manner where they're listening to others' ideas and responding to others' ideas. That's a big push in education right now, because we know that we have to listen to other people. We have to discuss. We learn a lot more when we're talking about things. So when they write their own questions, first of all, they're more invested in discussing them. And then it just kind of everything leads to more engagement, more learning.
Yeah. And then they got to figure out that they got to listen to what the other person says and they got to take it in, because that's the other thing that I'm sure you run into with kids. And I notice it with adults now that are way too into social media and stuff like that. The algorithm will find you the thing that agrees with you. You know, it'll suck you into your set of ideas and your way of thinking. And it will present things to you through all these different things, from the reels, from all the different, posts and everything else like that makes you feel as though, well, clearly I'm right. Look at all this stuff that it agrees with me, because the algorithms are so smart now and they want to keep you engaged on social media. So then you have these kids that are addicted to social media, or just like all the rest of us using it. They walk in, somebody presents a different idea and they go, yeah, that's not what I think, so it can't be true. Is that something you guys run into?
Yeah, I think so. But a lot of the student discourse, they may be, we try to give them kind of talk stems, because even students, you'd be surprised that, maybe you wouldn't, since you, have had younger kids, but, get them to just engage, say more than a couple of words sometimes is very, very challenging. Right. So getting them some, talk stems to kind of let's say, I agree with you because ... and you kind of fill in the blank. And so, or I disagree with you because, or I'm supporting my answer with, these facts. So all of that, it's just getting them to think through their ideas more and be able to explain their ideas more. And as you can imagine, if you can explain it more, you understand it more, and you're going to remember it more.
And the two of you were teachers before you started doing this, correct?
Correct,
Right.
yes.
So that must make it a little bit easier to communicate with the teachers, right? Because you want to be working side by side, step in step with them, right? And sometimes you might come up with an idea and they might look at you like, are you sure about that? So it probably helps to be teachers that are also supporting other teachers.
Correct. And like I still consider myself, we are teachers. So now we're just in a different role. But everything we do is 100% non-evaluative. We are not there to evaluate or judge anybody, but just to help teachers to reach their goals. So absolutely, we're walking side by side along with them. And I think that it does help that we have a lot of experience in the classroom ourselves.
Is this something that other schools are doing? This seems to me like something I've never heard of before, right?
It's
the idea of having an
newer,
instructor within the school that's doing support for the teachers and trying to look big picture doesn't seem like something that most schools are doing.
I do think it's most schools are having some form of it now. Yeah. So it's somewhat, I'd say, newer in the trend of education. But yeah, a lot of times some schools, like we're really focusing on, instructional coaching, so instructional practices, but other ones will have like kind of tech coaches and help teachers implement new technology in the classroom. Or even like focusing on maybe like, special ed with special ed teachers or whatever the focus might be. There's different kind of instructional coaches for those purposes.
You talk about the tech, it must be something you really have to keep up with. Like my kid just came back, like I said earlier, this past weekend went to an ACT, not at his high school. And the first thing he tells me, he goes, Dad, you should see these things that they got in the classrooms. We don't have that. Like these kids are always paying attention to what the next big thing is. And they probably pick up the tech quicker than some of the teachers.
For sure they do. Yes. Even when I was in the classroom, if I didn't know how to do something on tech, 100% a kid did.
Yeah. So, I mean, like for you guys now as doing what you're doing, you have to kind of really keep on top of that. Is that hard?
It is. But at the same time, I think that we're in a position now where we can do that. So we have to keep up on tech. We have to keep up on instructional strategies. I mean, that's part of our job now, whereas it's just a shift in focus. As a teacher, it's really hard to manage keeping up on that, as well as managing all of your students and your grading and your contacting parents and your lesson planning. So that's another way that we can kind of focus on the technology and on those instructional strategies and help support the teachers. Take something off their plate.
Yeah.
Do
you ever have a moment where you're sitting in the back of a classroom and you either learn something that you had no idea was true, or that like you get something new, even though you were a teacher, or I would also imagine this would be a hard job for me because I'd be sitting there going, yeah, but I want to say this too. Like I would have a hard time not jumping in because I'm a teacher and I'm watching another teacher teach. What is that like in the back?
Yeah, that's definitely an experience. I support our science teachers a lot, and I don't have like a previous background in science. So the stuff I learn from their classes are just so interesting to me, and I just come from a place of curiosity. Like this is awesome, and like, through the students' eyes, let me see how this works and how it comes about. Like our 8th grade science classes right now are working on like this like chemical reactions and diagnosing. There's basically a case study where there's someone has some illness and the students are basically diagnosing throughout the whole module what's wrong with her and how can we diagnose this with chemical reactions and different like, chemistry. And I think it's just so interesting and so engaging.
You're showing up to help out, but you're like, yeah, I'm learning something today. Like you're pumped up for the lesson.
Yeah, totally. I love it.
That's great.
I love it. All right. Well, Matt and Julie, I appreciate you stopping by. This is some really interesting stuff going on over at Central. Like you said, it's not something that is unique over there, but it is on the cutting edge, I would say. This is something that's a newer thing over the last couple of years, and it's kind of cool that they're doing that over there and doing their best big picture to kind of make sure the teachers are where they're supposed to be and the students are excelling, and thank you for so much that you do.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the EP Podcast. All things Evergreen Park. It's the EP Podcast. Evergreen Park.